But yeah, I mean, I was born and raised in Manhattan. That's where I pretty much, that's where I was born. And the two stints in Astoria were probably 6 years, maybe each. So you could say, born and raised in Manhattan, Queens.
Did you ever end up in LA? At some point, there must have been some draw to go out there.
I go out there to do business, and I'm a New Yorker at heart. If I had to go out to LA for any period of time, I mean, it's beautiful. I every time when I'm out there, I love it. But when your family, all your family's back on the East Coast, it's like I said, if I had to do it, then there's no question about it. Very easy to do.
I've got a lot of friends in the entertainment industry, and they've all kind of slowly, one by one, gone out there. Everybody's been fleeing New York, and I guess I'm surprised to some degree that it's still a requirement for people to be out there. Obviously, like, everybody is doing stuff remotely, but
yeah, you're right. You're actually right. You hit the nail on the head. That seems a bit absurd because now it's very easy. As a matter of fact, I do it myself with Family Guy. I do all of my Family Guy stuff from my home studio, and it's incredibly convenient.
We're talking a pretty long chunk of time between Jerky Boys records. You're doing a lot of VO stuff. Is that your primary gig at this point?
Yes, right now, absolutely. And through the years, if you had a project you were working on or you were doing something, that it's pretty much go all day long. I remember when I was doing phoners for major radio companies, they would start at 5 a.m, and I'd have literally one radio show after another. So till it coincided with the West Coast waking up, and the schedules were brutal. And so, you're talking in some cases, I remember doing, like 8 or 9, maybe 10 radio shows in one morning. And each of them they would get like 15 minutes to a half an hour, let's say. But it was, the schedule can be, bang, 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 and it's all talking. Sometimes you got to take care of your voice.
You have no problem talking, or it seems talking for an extended period of time.
Nope.
You were doing live prank calls for radio, or you were just calling in to shoot the shit?
Yeah, no, I didn't have anything to do with radio ever until I became famous for what I did. And I actually hosted the Stuttering John show. I think he had to go away or go to the West Coast for something for, I think, a week or two. We hosted the show, and it was all right. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, I didn't do any radio until I hit the scene and was famous for what I was doing. The whole Jerky Boys thing. And then obviously I was invited on to morning shows, afternoon drives, lots of radio, nighttime shows, you name it. Because what I did and what I do is like the perfect thing for radio.
That seems like it might have been a nice transition for you at the time, doing kind of a more regular radio program. Was that an avenue that you considered?
Well, I remember, I believe it was Tommy Mottola and Mariah Carey. It was a long time ago, and they wanted me to do Z100 in New York City. And at the time, I was, doing, making a movie, and we were doing, there's other stuff going on, lots of stuff. And the commitment to the time, you'd have to be getting up at 3:30 in the morning, and that's the time I was strolling in back then. So there was no way on earth that I could have made that commitment at that time. Radio is a perfect avenue for me to go down. Absolutely.
Your career specifically, or at least kind of the career with the Jerky Boys, I assume it must have been the case where everybody wants you all at the same time. All of a sudden you're fielding all these offers, and then I don't know, does it dry up to some degree overnight?
It depends. I mean, look at the staying power of the Jerky Boys. I mean, it's pretty incredible to go over all of these decades and maintain a massive following. And Seth MacFarlane, he said it best. He tells a story. So we're recording Family Guy, and I got my cans on, and I'm in New York City, and Seth is in my cans. He's like, Johnny, I got to tell you a funny story. So I'm on my way into work today. Guy in the car next to me, he's got to be thinking I'm out of my freaking mind. He says, I'm hunched over, I'm pissing myself, dying laughing. And he goes, I'm listening to the Jerky Boys. He goes, Johnny, I'm telling you, it's still the funniest thing I ever heard. He says, in his exact words, he goes, it's effing timeless. For whatever reason, the characters are beloved, and Jerky Boys fans, some of them have been there from the very beginning. And I've got tons of new fans from younger generations. And so it's amazing. Like I said, the staying power. And I believe the staying power is from the characters themselves, because these characters are much beloved.
At some point, though, you felt that it was need to, if not retire them, at least kind of put them on some kind of extended hiatus. Did it feel that for that time period that Jerky Boys had run their course?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, I never went away. I never went anywhere. I was doing commercials. I was doing, doing Anheuser-Busch, Budweiser, and using my characters. So I was using them for other things, but I just wasn't making any records. So, and the response to this new record and coming back has been absolutely fantastic, which is incredible, because that's, that gets back to, again, talking about, over the years, but for me personally, and remember, this is also my 19th season on Family Guy. You got that, you got this, and like I said, doing other situations with the characters, but just not a record. So that's why this is kind of cool that it's here now. And it's really something else. And I got the original artist, my artist, Sean Taggart, who everybody knows Sean. His work is tremendous. And he's been with me since day one. So Sean and I go back all the way. And he did the brand new album cover, which is, I think it's outstanding. And I think people are going to love it.
Part of the reason why I ask is because, I assume like at a certain point, what's the kind of the rock and roll adage of always leave them wanting more. Obviously if there had been a record every single year for the past 25, 30 years, there wouldn't be as much excitement for a return.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. There's a number of ways you can look at it, but the good news is, people have been really, I could even go as far as to say they've been kind of pissed off over the years and asking me and writing me letters and sending me emails and really pissed off that, like, Johnny, man, you got to drop another record, man. We need more stuff. Even MacFarlane said more than once, Johnny, you got to get back in the studio, man. You got to make another record. And because at Family Guy, they used to listen to all my records in the writer's room. I'm just glad I did it. I'm really glad I did it.
When Seth MacFarlane is giving you creative advice, you should probably heed it.
Well, he grew up on my stuff. He was just a little kid, and he was a huge Jerky Boys fan. So that's how I became part of that show. I actually read for the main character. I read for Peter, but so it was like a full circle kind of thing where Seth is telling me, "Come on, man, we got to get another record. You got to get more stuff out there." So yeah, you're right. It's like a full circle deal.
I've heard you describe your creative process or at least a process for putting the records together. And it sounds like it's actually fairly quick. I mean, it sounds like these are kind of like mostly first takes. It's not like you're really spending like months and months workshopping. So the process of actually doing a record is a relatively short amount of time. Yeah, that was then. It's a whole different world you're living in now. That's why this new record, I was like, it's a different process, because today everybody and their mother is sitting around waiting to be pranked. There's pranks this, pranks that, pranks that. A lot of people today, if something seems maybe just a little amiss, they're like, hey, am I being pranked? Because that's all they see. That's all they know. So it's either that or nobody answers phones anymore. So it's a very different climate. So you have to work a lot. You have to work 20 times harder to make it happen. As opposed to, a good example, let's say when I was making Jerky Boys 2. When I was making Jerky Boys 2, I'm going to say, I sit down, just as sure as we're sitting here right now, I'd sit down,
have my boombox, I'd have my my old speakerphone, and I would just make one, put it on the side, make one, put it on the side. I'd make 20 calls, 23 calls, whatever it was, 24 calls. Go back through them, and and every single one of them is good. These are all good. These are all usable. And they were that's how fast I was able to produce Jerky Boys 2, make Jerky Boys 2. It was a real, like a shock, a rude awakening to, let's put it this way, over the last 3 months, let's say. Over the last 3 months, maybe 4 months, there's a couple that I did about a year and a half ago, but only about maybe 2 of those. I think Garbo's is one of them. And there might be one other that I did about a year and a half ago. Still brand new material. But the rest of the calls were made within the last 3 months, 2 to 3 months. And like I said, it was definitely, at points, you're like, oh my God, So it was just a lot of extra work.
How was it that you were able to, for the second one, that you were able to do that with? It sounds like almost like no editing at all, that you weren't throwing any of them out. Were you considering sort of, taking a little bit more time to put it together, to pick the best ones, to curate a little bit more? No. Number two, they were all very, very, like, I guess the best word you could use is like magic, man. They all just flowed so nicely. Number 3 was incredible, introducing 5 new characters, and also having, for the first time, calls coming in. Number 4 was fantastic, and it was interactive for computers back in the day. So you could put it in your CD-ROM, I believe, or whatever they used to call it, and you could actually go into their apartments. You had to figure out a way to get into the elevator. Then you had to figure out a way to get into Sal's apartment and all their apartments, and you could mess around with them. And so number 4 was great, and number 5 was fantastic. But they were all, it was smooth go. But again, you have to remember that was many years ago. And I guess, people today, though, for whatever reason, they don't want to answer the phones, or, it's just, like I said, it's more it just is not as easy as it was then. And there's probably reasons for that if you want to try to figure it out, but I suspect part of the reason why is because the Jerky Boys existed for 2 decades. Part of the reason why people assume that things are pranks are more suspicious is because there was you, and there were some other prominent groups that were actually calling people up and pranking them. Yeah, that's for sure. When the Jerky Boys hit the scene, the only thing that was reality or shock value before the Jerky Boys was Alan Funt. Do you remember Alan Funt? Candid Camera, is that right? Yes. And then the Jerky Boys came along, and people were like, oh my God. And they'd make a tape, and they'd make some tapes for their friends, and they would give them a tape, and a cassette tape, and they would say, you're not going to believe this. You got to hear this. And it's all real. And the rest is history, man. Everybody made tapes for their families and their friends. That just crazy. At what point was it clear that this thing that you were doing, I assume that you started doing on a lark, at what point was it clear that, like, oh, this is actually, I can actually earn a living doing this? It was going through the motions of seeing something that you created for inside your friends, your family, just goofing around, doing it, and knowing, though, that I had some great characters and getting them on tape, interacting with other human beings. And then what happened was the process. For example, Howard Stern, he's got a terrestrial radio. He's got millions and millions of listeners, a tremendous audience. And Howard Stern gets a hold of it and loves it. And telling people on the air, he's like, folks, if anybody knows who this Frank Rizzo guy is, you got to call into the studio. Please let me. He's like, this is the funniest thing I ever heard in my life. And when you got Stern blowing it up like that, people are calling me, Johnny, got to turn on the radio. Howard's talking about you. Howard's playing your stuff. That's pretty, and I never was able to catch it. I was like, what, you heard? And people were like, oh man, you missed it. I was never able to catch it until later.
then I was able to hear what people were talking about. Howard, to this day, Howard plays my stuff. That started the ball rolling. Next thing, record labels are looking for me. You sign with a record label. Next thing, you're selling millions of records. With the amount of the bootlegs, it was written about as the largest bootleg ever, larger than a Grateful Dead bootleg. And with that being said, it still sold millions of records because people, I guess, they wanted to have it now on CD form. They wanted to have it now on a cassette, a brand new cassette where they could enjoy it. Because most people's cassettes were worn out, old and broken and worn out. And so when it came out on with the record company, people were very ecstatic about that. And it went on to sell multi-platinum records. Jerky Boys 1, 2, 3, they're all, but so yeah, when that's happening, and then you see that happening, and then you're starting to understand these terrific numbers and multi-platinum and all this other stuff. Now I'm making award-selling videos for Sony and MTV, Disney Pictures, and Disney Pictures Caravan and Touchstone. And now you're getting calls from Tony Danza and Sony and all the major Hollywood companies to make a movie. And it's mind-blowing. It's absolutely incredible.
These days, it's difficult to have any level of success and really maintain anonymity, right? I mean, once your stuff is out there, it's hard to keep your identity a secret. Do you think that in the early days, the group benefited from that sense of anonymity from for example, Howard, not hearing this cool thing, but not knowing who it was or where it was from?
Yes, I think that was part of the mystique. And I'll never forget, I had a deal with Disney when I did the motion picture that I'm not allowed to show my face. We weren't allowed to show our faces, which gets back to what you were saying. Disney wanted to capitalize on that very idea, that the mystique, and didn't want us to be seen until they saw us for the first time in the movie. So I had to wear, like a bank robber, I had to wear bandanas all the time. I did Woodstock. I did Woodstock 94 in front of 500,000 screaming fans. And I took the microphone and I went on stage in front of all these hundreds of thousands of people. And I did Sal Rosenberg because the place was a muddy mess. And as soon as I said a few words of Sal Rosenberg, the whole 500,000 people screaming and yelling. It was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. And I'll never forget, what was it? Greg Allman looking over at me because the Allman Brothers were getting ready to go on. And he's got his head tilted sideways and he's looking at me like, what the hell is that? And he's listening to me do my impressions. So that was very cool. That's a memory I'll never forget. Looking over at Greg Allman and he's looking at me like, what the? It's just amazing now when you look back through time, the amount of people that the Jerky Boys has. And I guess the best thing is too, when people come to me and they say in emails and in person, Johnny, I tell you, your work has gotten me through some very, very rough times. And I just want to say thank you for that. And that's always one of the best parts of it, when you create something that people really enjoy. Was that the height of surreality for you? Was that like the strangest moment being at Woodstock and catching the attention of Greg Allman? I've had a lot of really great moments, tremendous. But I just thought that was funny because I could see it all over his face. He sees me standing there with a bandana on and I'm hiding my face and he hears all these characters. Obviously, when things start happening for you, they happen really quickly. But, were you able to, at the kind of height or at the ascent of it, were you able to take those moments to step back and appreciate just how completely bizarre what was happening to you was? Absolutely. I mean, you have every chance you get a few minutes to think. You get a chance to process. Everybody's got a mission in this lifetime. Everybody's got something that is going to be their deal, or it's going to be something that they create, or they something that they've something that they're specifically responsible for, and people look to them for that thing. I guess a good example would be like Eddie Van Halen. You know, it was a very specific thing that he did, created, sound, and just to be able to do something that's solely yours, you know, that you created and that people go nuts for, it's kind of a special deal.
How bizarre was it when, you know, the fact that somebody was interested in turning it into a movie? I mean, that's the thing I think that really I would have had difficulty really wrapping my head around.
Well, that's typical Hollywood. Hollywood, you know, Tony Danza was the one that stepped up to the plate. You know, he's in New York. Yeah, Tony Danza. He's a you know, real New Yorker. And he saw the value in it right away. He was the one that flew me out to Los Angeles. And I had meetings with Tony and his company right off the bat. And they just didn't understand it. Sony didn't understand. And Tony was, I'll never forget Tony banging on the table. He's like, "What are you talking about?" He said, you think it through. You of course you can create something here. And by the end of the day, I saw every major studio in Los Angeles. And it was Emilio Estevez was with Disney. And right away, they just said, absolutely, we can definitely make this happen. And that's what we did. And you know, Jim Malconian directed the picture, and we had some of the biggest talent on the planet that came forward to be a part of that motion picture. That you're talking William Hickey, Suzanne Shepard from Goodfellas. You got Alan Arkin. You know, I mean, just a cast. You had Big Pussy from Vinny Pastore from The Sopranos. And the list goes on. You had Alan North, you had Brad Sullivan from these are all big time, you know, accomplished actors.
In hindsight, do you think maybe you were a little overexposed, that maybe it was too much at once?
I don't think so in comparison to other people. You know, it wasn't like you know, it was just one movie. After the movie, I worked on the platinum video I made for Sony. Called Don't Hang Up Tough Guy. So it was never, you know, like constantly in your face, where I've seen other acts, you know, they're always in your face. So, you know, I could be wrong, but I don't feel that.
When the movie, you know, maybe doesn't perform as well as you would hope it would, or, you know, doesn't get the reception perhaps you're hoping for, how big of a setback is that for the project?
It's not. It wasn't for me. It wasn't for me at all, because you know, the fans got it. We weren't setting out to make Gone with the Wind. So the fans, they got it. And the funny thing is now the movie has almost a 5-star rating. So when you go back in time and you look at movies, I mean, some great movies, you know, like some Jim Carrey comedies or the critics are always going to drag you through the mud. They don't want to hear about your comedy. They don't want to hear about your movies. But I didn't give a shit. I had a blast doing it. I had a lot of fun, and the movie gets more attention today than it did back then. So for me, it's I don't really get into all that crap. But it was so much fun working with those people and actually making the movie.
You alluded to this a little bit earlier, and you said that there were people who were asking or begging for you to bring the project back in album form. Did you always assume that there was always going to be another record at some point down the line?
I always thought I would do another record. I just didn't know when. And it's something. It truly is something that you have to feel. You can't just say, you know what, today, I'm going to make myself by the end of 2 weeks. I'm going to put another record together. It doesn't work like that. You literally have to feel it. You got to feel it inside. You got to feel that you're really in the mood to be doing this, and or it's just not going to work. You know, I can't even put my finger. I can't explain it, but you have to absolutely feel that you're going to enjoy doing this. You're going to really enjoy doing this, and you're just going to let it happen. I felt that way putting this together, so I felt really good about it.
I've read that there was perhaps a bit of a kind of a personal falling out with Kamal at some point around 2000. Was it creative differences? No, actually, and it wasn't on my end. There's no personal, I had, right. If you're grown men, you're grown men. I can't tell Kamal what to do.
it was actually 1997 when he officially left the group. It was January 97, and it was he didn't want to do it. So we were on our way back from Boston on a train, and he hands our manager a note, just a little note, and it said, "I'm done. I'm finished. I want out of here." And that was it. And he went on to make. I think he does. I know he's directing, or he's a director, and he does. He writes his own pictures. So he writes and he directs, and I always wished him well. I always wished him well, and wished him well with his projects. That's, but I can't just stop the Jerky Boys. If you listen to all the Jerky Boys records, I mean, I do 97% of the work on the records. So I can't just say, hey, that's it, because there are millions of fans out there, and I don't think they would ever want to see me do that.
For you, it's water under the bridge, but I assume there's no conversations around having him bringing you back in to collaborate.
Yeah, I mean, that would have to be a decision that he would make. It's not something I can tell him to do, or even, ask him. He's been, reached out a couple of times, I'm sure, but it's not what he wants. It's going to have to be a decision he makes.
When you're doing The Family Guy, or when you're doing a film, or any of these other things, they're more of a kind of a collaborative process. It sounds like the process of the Jerky Boys, when it's just you, is really solo. Do you miss having some kind of collaboration in the process of making calls?
Well, I never had collaboration. Anytime I've made a call, as far as because when you're on your own. You're alone. Now, there's a couple of calls where we did duets, like where we're both in the call, and there are a few really good ones, like the one where I play his wife, and he's trying to rent a yacht, and we get to a yelling match, and my wife, she don't like them prices. And the next thing you know, I'm cursing in the background as his wife, and we're getting to fights. Or the other one with the television set where touch it in the back. The guy said touch it in the back, and then the guy on the phone's like, no, nobody should be touching anything. And my character gets electrocuted. My character Pico gets electrocuted. So there was a lot of really, really fun bits that we did together. But that's a different ballgame. When you're doing that together, you're playing around together, that you're playing with the characters together. But for the most part, when I'm going, I just close my eyes. I don't even open my eyes. I just close my eyes and I just keep going until the skit is over. So
you're really in that character.
Yeah. And because, like I said, nobody knows the characters better than me, because they're all based on family members. And, friends, family members. Kissel, old man Kissel is my Uncle Vinny, who was a World War II veteran. I actually dedicated Jerky Boys 5 to the memory of Kissel, my Uncle Vinny. When you're in these characters, I've always been a firm believer, people, they want to hear me laugh while I'm doing a skit. But I don't, Johnny, come on, man, how come you never even crack it? You don't even laugh, you don't giggle. And I said, because when I'm doing this, I'm in the character, and it's in real time, and it's really happening to this person, whether it be Sal, Frank, Jack. So I'm in the character, fully immersed in the character. Otherwise, to me, it's not going to work. It's only going to be funny if people say that, how the hell did he keep him on the line? That's part of the process. Afterwards, I might, there's probably a few calls where afterwards I hit the button, and afterwards you'll hear me chuckle a little bit or laugh a little bit. But for the most part, I don't ever laugh when I'm doing the skits. Do the characters exist outside of the calls? I mean, do you find yourself kind of reverting into character at all in your daily life? I do that a lot. Although when I do it, it's not with the characters that people would think, oh, Johnny, I could hear him doing a Sal, I could hear him doing a Frank. It's always some other character that's in my head that I actually put one on the new album. And it's so wild and different. The character is just, I tell people, some people have already told me that that's one of their favorite tracks on the new album. It's a character that I would do if I was in the shower or driving down the road to get a cup of coffee. And it doesn't make a lot of sense, the character, but it's a very strange character. And if you listen to the new album, you'll hear it when it's the character that's talking about, he made a grand piano, and he made it with his own hands, and he made it from scratch. And I'm talking about making the piano using dirt and hemp. And I actually made all the wood myself. It's all fabricated by me. And when you get a load of it, and you hear that character, you'll see, if you listen to it a couple of times, that's the kind of stuff I do by myself, or when I'm thinking about something, or I might just start talking in another character. But as far as me talking or doing that in any of the, like Frank Rizzo, or, you know, if anyone, I might do that mostly in Big Old Badass Bob, the cattle rustler, or I might do that in my Jack Torse voice. But as far as Sal and Frank, I don't think I do that much, or ever did it.
When I found out I was going to be talking to you, and I was looking through some interviews, I found an article from, I think, like 2015, where the headline of the article is that the Jerky Boys could never exist today, which is obviously, like, I think the sentiment is that, like, you know, they don't think that you could start today. Is there truth in that for you? Do you think that something that if the Jerky Boys had started in 2020, that it could have caught on in any sort of similar way?
You know, I think because of the product, because it is the Jerky Boys, I think absolutely. I think it definitely, because it would still be a breath of fresh air coming in. It would be still very different. But I do understand. That's a very, very good, you know, question. But it was just magical the time that I hit, because when I hit, there was no internet. When I hit, you're talking about cassette tapes. You're talking about back in you know, 70s, 80s, you know, early 90s. You know, the internet didn't really stroll in like on a great scale. And what would you say, 95, 96?
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So now you're talking, you got the internet. So I didn't have that luxury. If you really think about it, people had to make it. I was viral before there was that word viral. People had to make it. People had to make 20 copies. People had to make 10 copies. People had to give them out, physically hand them to friends and their friends and their friends and their friends. And that's how it happened. It was all word of mouth. It was word of mouth, and it was the bootleg, and that's it. That's the way it happened. And so think about that. So if it came at an easier time where it's super easy, but it still has that difference, and it has all these wonderful characters, it's almost like a little Looney Tunes kind of thing. There's a good chance. But I do totally understand. You know, I get it. I do get it.
I think there's the technological aspect that you alluded to, but there's also thematically, you know, in terms of sensitivities and obviously, like, you know, people's tastes in comedy changing over the years. Do you think that just in terms of some of the subject matter that was covered and the way that it was covered, that would be throw up some red flags for people in the media landscape of 2020? Yeah.
See, when I did this originally, first of all, I don't worry about that, because I'm not in the game of purposely going out there and being mean-spirited and trying to hurt people's feelings and try to attack people and try to do stuff that's completely disrespectful to people. That's not what I do. What I do is I have characters, bunch of characters. I put them in crazy situations, and they get into these absurd scenarios. And you know, they did this. This same thing was around back in 1993, 1994. The same thing was around then. You know, USA Today had a full center page ad. The Jerky Boys. The Jerky Boys are offensive. And I said, this is the best thing that could ever happen to me, because the truth of it is, my fans will read that and say bullshit, because my fans knew better. My fans know that none of that's true. And then Tipper Gore comes along, Al Gore's wife, and she says, we got to put warning labels on these Jerky Boys records so that the kids can't buy them. What do you think that did? That drove sales by the millions. The record sold by the millions because of those warning labels. A couple of F-bombs out of Frank Rizzo's mouth. You know, I'll wrap your fucking head in with a ratchet. He's a character. He's based on a real person. That's as crazy as it's going to get. But yeah, it's the best way to put it today, and even back then, if you get up in the morning and you're out there looking for something that's going to offend you, you're going to find it. You're going to find it, and I can't help you. I do what I do. If you don't want to listen to my characters, and you don't want to hear Saul Rosenberg, and you don't want to hear Frank Rizzo, that's your prerogative. I don't know how, but if you're going to be offended by it, that's your prerogative. But I don't ever set out to do that to people. I don't ever set out to hurt people or be mean-spirited. That's not me. It's not what I do. If that's what I don't get up in the morning looking.
I guess what I'd say is just like on a personal level, like I know that there are things that I feel like, to some degree that like I've kind of evolved, and that there are things that I probably said in like the 90s where I was like, oh yeah, no, I absolutely would not say that now. Is there anything you feel though that maybe made it onto a record that you've evolved since that maybe you wouldn't have said or done at the time?
Not that I can think of. I think back and I think of the records, and again, it was just a situation, and especially me. If you compare me to anybody or any big comedian out there, like if you look at Dice Clay or you look at any of these, I don't. That's not what I do. I do my characters, and they don't say things. They didn't say things back then that like now I'm, oh man, geez, I wish I wouldn't have said that, because I didn't. I don't have anything back then that I look back on and say, wow, that's not, that's, geez, because that's not, I wasn't interested in that. My humor was self-deprecating humor.
It's got to be a hard line to walk. I mean, it sounds like you weren't necessarily super conscious of the fact when you're doing it, but it's got to be a hard line to walk with a character that like to some degree is a stereotype to do that without it kind of being a little mean-spirited. Was that something at the very least that when you were doing the recording that you were conscious of? Not at all. It was a family friend. And when I was just a little kid, when he would come over speaking to my mom, I would pick up on his nuances. And I thought it was amazing. I thought the way he spoke and his mannerisms, I actually was just a little kid. I was like, that is so freaking cool. And also, like I said, growing up in Astoria, I picked up on all the dialect and the Greeks and the Spanish. And as a little kid, I was soaking all that stuff in. And that's how I grew up, doing all these different voices and characters. Never once in my head did I say, hey, I'm going to be mean-spirited.